welcome to Real Talk. I'm Alex and I'm joined by my co-host Nickii.
Hi.
Hi. And in this episode, you're going to hear a bit of this.
She found out she was pregnant. She told her boss and she was fired by voicemail the next day.
And a bit of that.
That's not the parents' fault that bad management is being disproportionately affecting you.
And we're also joined by our trusty BS buzzer. So if anyone is saying anything that we think is going into the realms of a bit of BS, we can all press this.
Bullshit in aisle 2. That's not my favourite one. I think it needs another
try
go.
a different one.
Bullshit.
Short and to the point. This will be in the middle of the desk if anyone wants to press on that.
In today's episode, we're speaking to an activist, campaigner and changemaker. She's an ex-ad agency dweller and is now Pregnant and Screwed's head of campaigns and communications, Lauren Fabianski. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
And also joining us today is one of our resident IMA experts. She has a keen interest to dismantle the patriarchy at any opportunity. She's super passionate about today's topic. It's IMA's lead planner, Jess Ramsey-Loy.
Hi.
How are you doing, Jess?
I'm really good, thank you. Very excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Right, let's get started then. Lauren, what are we calling bullshit on today?
I'm calling bullshit on Adland initiatives for working parents not resulting in significant change.
Oh, it's a big important topic, I think. To start with, could we just hear a bit more about Pregnant Then Screwed and the kind of journey that organisation has been on and how it's led you here?
Absolutely. So Pregnant Then Screwed is a charity. We are 11 women who are the full-time staff. We all work remotely, we all work flexibly, and then we are supported by 140 volunteer legal advisors and HR professionals who staff our support services. So if you are experiencing pregnancy or maternity discrimination, or you suspect you might be at work, you can phone a HR advisor. They'll tell you whether you have to follow some HR procedures or whether you might have a legal claim. If you do, we'll give you an hour's free pro bono legal advice. And then after that, it's up to you what you want to do. If you want to take that to employment tribunal, we'll support you. We'll give you a mentor. It can be quite a long, grueling process. You don't have to use our legal team. You can go with whoever you want. We will support you through that process. Why this is so important is because there's 54,000 women a year in the UK that get pushed out of their jobs because of pregnancy and maternity discrimination. 54,000 every year. And people don't believe that number, and it sounds astonishing, like in the UK, really? And one of the reasons that you don't hear a lot about this is because so many of those women are gagged with NDAs once it happens to them. So Pregnant and Screwed was founded by our CEO, Jolie Brearley. She was working for a children's charity. She found out she was pregnant. She told her boss and she was fired by voicemail the next day.
Wow.
And she thought, oh, it's okay, the law will protect me. And it turned out it didn't. She spent the little money that she had when she didn't know where her next paycheck was going to come from with a lawyer, sending a letter to her employer. They put it in the bin. She couldn't afford at that time to pursue it any further. She was having a high-risk pregnancy. Her doctor told her to avoid stress. So she did. She avoided stress. She tried to let it go. After she'd had the baby, she tried to pursue the claim further, and she found out that you only have 3 months from the point that this discrimination occurs in the office to raise an employment tribunal claim, which is no time at all. So that's our longest running campaign, is to extend the employment tribunal time limit to at least 6 months. We would like it to be longer, but let's start there. Let's double it. Amazingly, the Labour Party have committed to this if they form the next government, so that's quite exciting. But yeah, that's a bit of history of how we came to be. I work in the campaign and communication side, so I work on trying to change the policies and inform legislation that will stop this kind of discrimination from happening.
And it sounds like you've been quite successful with that, because I was reading you've had like 89 mentions in the Houses of Parliament.
Yeah, so it works out in the last 3 years, it's about 1 mention every 12 days.
That's pretty good going.
Research, yeah. We are quite fortunate that women are pissed off and they want to change this. It's happened to them or it's happened to somebody that they know, and they will engage in our research. And we do a lot of research. We're always releasing surveys. It gets a lot of press attention, which gets politicians' attention. So yeah, it's working.
And what's like the end goal, I guess? Is there this would be a perfect scenario, mic drop, our work here is done, or do you see this as being a constant set of improvements adopting themselves to the way that the world continues to evolve?
Yeah, that's quite a complex question. I mean, there are some big things that we want to change that we think will make a really significant impact, and they are changes to paternity leave, believe it or not, and I'll talk about that a bit more. Flexible working legislation, and access to justice. Those things are really going to make a difference to changing the culture that allows pregnancy and maternity discrimination to thrive. Yes, the world's changing all the time, and there'll probably be some new bullshit that we've got to deal with. But
right now,
now, that's what we're focused on. And childcare, making childcare accessible and affordable.
Flexible working is open to interpretation, isn't it? And again, it's evolving with the way that the workplace is evolving. Actually, aside from parents as a whole, it's a topic. What is the primary considerations for flexible working when it comes to this?
Yeah, so I think it's important to remember that flexible working is not just remote working. We accept that there are some jobs that can't be done remotely, and that's okay. Like, you can't be a heart surgeon remotely. It's just not going to work. But there are so many different kinds of flexible working that a lot of people don't think of as flexible working, and that's things like job shares, that's things like working part-time hours, or predictable hours can even be flexible working, especially if you work at shift patterns, things like that. It can be compressed hours, it can be flexi time. There's so many different ways to do it. Remote working is great and it works for so many people, and we saw this big cultural shift in the pandemic where all of these people who've always said, no, we've always done it this way, it can't possibly be done remotely, found out that actually it can be done remotely. There's lots of different ways that you can apply flexible working, and we really need to raise awareness of that. And the government said that they wanted to move to this like flexible first culture. We don't think we're quite there yet, but we're working on it.
I think we're going to come on to talk about Adland and how Adland is evolving, which hopefully we are. But I just wondered your thoughts on the system in general, because I know I've got children who are 16 and 14 now, so I'm out of the trenches, I suppose, in terms of the primary school type system. But I always felt that the system was kind of rigged against working parents, not just from an employer perspective, but also from the way the setup was with school and all that kind of thing. School hours for reception were initially something like 10 till 2. And then when they got into, year 1, etc., 9 till 3:30. And it's really difficult to try to find employment that suits those hours. So yes, it's definitely on the employer to be more flexible, but it did feel like the way the school system worked made it really difficult for mums to actually find jobs that suited those hours.
It really is. And I think it's quite important to point out here that we're talking about how this makes things difficult for mums, not how this makes things difficult for parents. And the reason that those biases exist is because of our parental leave system. Like, it's so antiquated. What it says to the majority of families is after 2 weeks, the dad, you're not needed. Like, you're not needed, you go back to work and leave the mum to figure this out, leave the mum to establish all of the routines, and that puts the onus of childcare on the mother for the rest of that child's life. Then it means that it's the mother that they call when the child's sick at school. It means that it's the mother that's trying to figure out how they're going to get across to the wraparound care to pick up in time before it closes, and why they can't stay late for that meeting, which is one of the reasons why Pregnant and Screwed is campaigning so hard to change paternity leave and extend it, to try and change those norms.
And I think that's a bigger topic than that. In a way, we were talking about this as well. So I think if you're in a senior position as a male, then you kind of almost govern your own flexibility. So, and increasingly, I think parents are, Alex, you were saying 50-50 in terms of responsibility. But for the less senior members of teams to there's a different stigma attached, I think, to dads to say, I need to leave because my kid is sick, or I need to leave because it's sports day and I want to see that particular event. So I think there's different challenges that dads face when it comes to actually saying, I want to be an active parent and I also want to be present in the workplace.
Yeah, it's huge. And I do think senior staff have a big role to play here, not only in forming the policy that happens within that agency or business, but also their behaviour sets a precedent. If the senior member of staff is going to watch their kid in a school play, it shows that that's okay, you know, and they're not trying to do it sneakily. It is really important. And we did some research with YouGov last year that found that just 18% of Brits think that 2 weeks paternity leave is long enough. But nearly 3 in 5 dads are only taking 2 weeks or less. So there's a huge mismatch there between what people think is acceptable, what people think dads need, and what dads are actually able to take. And we know that this has a huge impact on the mental health of parents, the ability, both parents, the physical recovery of the mother, the mental health of the father, their ability to bond with their child, even the educational outcomes of the child, and the likelihood of divorce amongst those couples. You know, the knock-on implications are huge. And if you look at other countries who have 6 weeks or more paternity leave in the OECD, they have smaller gender participation gaps in the labour market. It's actually more equal women, you know, going into the workforce, because it changes everything. It changes the culture.
So we were going to talk about this specific to Adland, largely, I guess, because that's your experience. Obviously, we represent an advertising agency. Why is it a topic that is pertinent, specific to Adland, in your opinion? Are we significantly more inflexible than other industries, or if that's the case, is that due to the nature of the work we do? Because we're not particularly corporate as an industry. Yet we are a service business and therefore are, I guess, there to serve clients. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I do think this is it's a countrywide issue. It's a UK-wide issue, definitely. But as it pertains to Adland specifically, I think there's a lot of toxic masculinity still in Adland. I think there's a lot of Mad Men-esque culture still there. There's a lot of people who are still trying to cling on to that culture, and there's a huge misuse of non-disclosure agreements in Adland. You know, so many women experience discrimination, harassment or other malpractice, and then they're just silenced. The stories that we hear are heartbreaking. Women who are so skilled, so talented, they've been doing their jobs for years, they're very, very good at it, and they experience this pregnancy and maternity discrimination. They're gagged, they have to leave the job, they can't tell any of their employees why they're going, and that's it.
I find that just shocking.
Yeah, I do.
You know, and I've never really understood this drain that you get of women in business in general, let alone the advertising industry, after having a child. You know, I dropped out of a great job because I couldn't find the flexibility. That was 16 years ago when things were significantly different. But if you think of all of the investment of time that has gone into that woman and all of the learnings that she has, to just let that go because you can't get your head around some sort of flexible working opportunity for that person just seems madness. I mean, the wasted money, let alone anything, you know, for the business, it seems ridiculous.
And that's why you see so many agencies. And I think I didn't realise at the time how bad it was until Jess pointed it out one day, that there was no senior women at an old version of an agency that we used to work at. There were no senior women. And Jess took it upon herself to go buy all of these amazing strategic books written by women and got all of the women to go out for brunch together. And we spoke about that. We spoke about why are there so many junior female staff and no senior women. It's
Yeah, it's mental. I mean, I think it's quite different in the version of the agency
Yes.
that we're in now. Obviously, like sitting in this room with like two of the leaders of our business.
Yeah.
But to your point, Nickii, earlier about we are a service business, and I think you feel that pressure, especially on global clients, of when you have a very set amount of time that you can complete your job in the day because you have care and you have responsibilities outside of work that aren't flexible at all. You don't want to be doing client calls in the car. You don't want to be doing them when you're distracted or you're not giving your client your full attention because they're paying for your time and your energy. So I think there's a lot of pressure that women put on themselves, and if it doesn't sort of run through the culture of the agency, that everyone's has this mindset of flexibility, and it doesn't sort of jump out of the policy that you get from the top, it can be quite a challenging place to succeed as a parent.
And has it improved? Am I being naive to think that Alex's experience of 16 years ago versus where we are today, there's not been a significant change? And obviously you guys focus very much on the data and the insights, so you can tell me if that's different. But I'd hope that we are in very much a different place. And I'm not talking about our agency, but I mean the industry at large. Is that the case, or are you still suggesting that there are too many cases where individuals haven't had that flexibility that they deserve?
There's definitely still a lot of improvement to be done. Like, we're nowhere near some sort of feminist utopia. Like, that's miles and miles away. I would like to think things are getting better. In a lot of areas, our data suggests that it's getting worse.
Right.
We know that non-disclosure agreements are getting worse, and that's one of the most difficult things to capture data on. We do find ways to do it, but by their very nature, these people are taking a risk even by participating in the surveys. We do still manage to do it, though. Flexible working, we think that the pandemic fixed that. We're now seeing a big rollback of a lot of the steps forward that were made in the pandemic, which is so frustrating because I make a point of working with agencies who are super flexible. Like, I want to work with people who live our values, and I've worked with strategic consultancies, dev agencies, design houses, video production agencies, PR firms, event teams, done national multi-channel award-winning campaigns with agencies that I've never even met in real life, and I know that it can be done. So I just don't think there's an excuse, really. I don't think there is. I think there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, by those examples that I've just given, there are people who are doing it well.
What can businesses be doing to make sure that they've got kind of step-by-step things, foundations set for women who are, say, going on maternity leave or coming back from maternity leave, to ensure that it's not seen as a difficult thing, I suppose? Because I think some of the problem is that businesses perhaps haven't got their head around how it can work. So having resources and playbooks and that kind of thing that support the business in helping women assimilate back into the business in a flexible way, I think would be quite helpful.
Design jobs to be flexible from the default. Don't design a job and then try shoehorn flexibility into it. When you are creating a role, think about the different ways that this could work flexibly, and that it could be a job share. It could be flexi time. It could be a part-time role. It could be remote working. Like, whatever that is, really think about that. And think about that honestly, like when you're designing that role, and put that in the job description. So everybody can see all the different ways that you could do this job. And then it changes the culture. It removes the burden from the parent that's returning from work, or the carer whose parents fallen ill and now they've got these new caring responsibilities that they've never had before, or somebody who's disabled or got some new kind of neurodivergence who would really benefit from that kind of flexibility. It puts it all there in the job description, and it says it's okay to apply any of these kinds of flex to this role. These are the things that we can do. And it really changes the power dynamic as well. It also shows to other staff who don't have caring responsibilities or neurodivergence or anything that might just want to get really good at tennis that they can use that flex. And it changes the culture so that flexibility is not something that's like a burden or something that you get depending on how good your relationship is with your line manager. It's just something that's just a way of working.
Yeah. I think the challenge we often have is we'd love to be completely flexible all the time, and we trust our people to do the right thing when it comes to the work, etc. but it's also just the demands of the industry, as you alluded to. You know, clients will phone at inconvenient times because that's the expectation of they have of an agency. And with the best will in the world, you want to be as flexible as you can with your people. But how do you do that when on the other side of the fence you've got clients who aren't really thinking about that? They're just thinking about the work that they need to get done, and we want to show that we're providing great service to our clients.
Adland can do flex. Like, I really do think that they can. Different kinds of flex. You know, it might not always be remote working. You might be working unusual hours, but I've got a member of staff in my team who pretty much exclusively works evenings and weekends, because to her that is flex. And to me that is having somebody there when I'm not in the office. It's win-win. She can be reactive when an MP says something stupid, like that's great. And agencies could staff themselves like that if they wanted to. They absolutely could. And also I think a lot of it, yes, you do get very demanding clients. Sometimes you get really crap clients who are just really unrealistic, and nothing is going to change that behaviour. And a lot of that's to do with culture, you know, like what are the brands that you want to align with? And a lot of it's to do with account management. You know, I've worked with 2 different agencies who worked on the 4-day week model. And I knew that they were all out on Fridays. It was the same as a Saturday or Sunday. And that worked because, well, 2 reasons. I had amazing account managers. They were all mums, and they were incredible. They were so on their shit. They knew what I needed before I needed. I knew where everything was. I knew what all the capacity was in the studio all the time. I knew that if I was throwing something in, what I was taking out to get that. Like, they were so good at that communication.
Jess, what's your experience? Obviously you were here with a point of view. It'd be good to hear that.
I mean, my experience of like being pregnant, going on maternity leave, come back on the positive was a positive on the whole. I think, you know, where it's maybe like there's chinks in the armor is where it's inconsistent. And I think that's where if you don't have that confidence or like a good account management or good leadership, things can sort of fall apart for people. So it's like, obviously we have a family-friendly agency, we have flexible working, we have core hours. But I think if there's anything that sort of runs through the culture that has that kind of antiquated madman sort of experience, it doesn't work for parents.
As a planner, I was interested to know what you think in terms of thinking about our consumers that we're targeting on behalf of our clients. Obviously, if we don't ensure that we've got a really diverse range of different sorts of consumers in our business, it means that we can't actually be representative and truly understand the consumer that we're targeting on behalf of our clients. So do you find the fact that we provide a flexible environment for mums something that's helped you in terms of the work?
I think so. I mean, I think obviously, I mean, it's a little bit of a soft statistic, but women make up like 85% of like household purchasing decisions, don't they? So like having our perspective in the agency and also listened to in the agency, I think is really helpful, especially as a parent. When you're not just making decisions about yourself, you might be making decisions for at least one other person or multiple people in the household. So I think that perspective definitely helps. And I think that it certainly helps me do my job better from having lived the experience before being a parent and after being a parent, but also just like being able to get shit done in like the time that I have it. I think, and especially we were talking about this before, like pre-pandemic, we used to spend so much time in the office just like sitting around and chatting. Like I just remember like sitting around the agency that we used to work in together. We would just spend hours at the end of the day talking. And that was really valuable time because we were throwing ideas around. We were like putting things on whiteboards, but there was also just so much talking and so much just empty space like floating through water. Whereas when you become a parent, your time is so focused. You're so focused on delivering things and getting things done. You know, I have this time to do it and I need to like ship it, get it out the door and be really confident that it's done. So I think it gives you an edge in a way as a parent.
I do think it makes a huge difference to have diverse pitching teams and diverse creative ideas being thrown into it. And like even within the strategy and the planning teams, like you produce different insights if you've got a more diverse team. Like it's so important.
I totally agree.
And I think that's true of any and all biases though, isn't it? It's that, you know, that isn't unique to the topic we've got here. That's just about making sure that there are no restrictions and you employ based on talent and talent only, I think.
It really is. But I, remember pitches going out to clients that were targeting mums in their 30s to 60s that had no senior women working on that pitch at all, and seeing the stuff that they produced and the ideas that they came up with, and they were frankly really sexist, and then people would be surprised why they didn't win the pitch.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that for some reason it's quite easy to pigeonhole mums and talk about it in the work. So I remember seeing a campaign, it was only a couple of years ago, it was from Pampers.
Yeah.
And they, in this campaign, they were positioning themselves as proud sponsors of mums.
Right.
And it offended me massively because I was like, where's my cut of this? I'm being sponsored, apparently. No one told me. Why are you my sponsor?
What about the dads?
And my kids don't wear nappies anymore, but apparently you're sponsoring me. Great.
And I think it's also that kind of simplicity of categorising mums as one thing.
Exactly.
Which is just bonkers, actually, isn't it, in itself?
And that's why I think it is really important that we do embrace, mums coming back to work and all of the great opinions that we bring as diverse women.
It's
basically
so obvious when the target demographic have not been consulted on the campaign. I think it just really sticks out. Well, and it doesn't. It sticks out for being terrible, or it just goes by because nobody understands the audience.
Just putting kind of reversing the conversation a little bit. Some employees without kids have been cited. I've experienced it when people have said things to me as a leader around parents getting special treatment, whether that's about prioritisation of school holidays and booking time off, whether it's about why am I picking up the work because I'm in the office and other people aren't, etc. So there's always various perspectives on any of these topics. Does anyone have a view on that?
Yes.
Of course. Discuss.
Okay, so the thing about parents get priority over booking specific holidays, no, that's just ridiculous. Whoever puts the holiday request in first should get that holiday. It doesn't matter who they are. That's just down to you being organised in yourself. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's just a non-issue, I think, that can be resolved very quickly with a straight talking conversation. People saying that they have to pick up work because parents aren't there. As long as everybody understands what their contracted hours are and their deliverables, and everybody's supposed to deliver those, does it matter when you do them? And if people feel that they're having to go above and beyond those contracted hours, then that's an issue that they should resolve with their manager, because jobs aren't being quoted for correctly, or there's a time management issue, or, there's lots of different things that's not the parent's fault that you've got too much work to do, that the client's asking too much for you, that somebody didn't quote correctly for how many hours it was going to take to deliver that. You can't be mad at them that bad management is being disproportionately affecting you.
I also think there's something really interesting in what Jess said around having to get laser sharp at your own time management, which is a skill we all need to improve on, irrespective of our personal circumstances. And if parenthood is the thing that forces you to do that, and as a result the way you manage your time and deliver the work you need to work is far better than when you've got the luxury of I can sit and chew the fat over the evening because I don't have anywhere to be. That's all again just about evolving and maturing in the way you work, isn't it? So I think that's an example of where that's made you do that, but actually that's a great life skill anyway that we all should have. We should all be totally efficient and spend our time wisely, irrespective of what else we have to do in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. We were on a panel with a really senior member of staff from this huge global company, and he said in the panel prep session, he didn't say this in the full panel because he would have been crucified, but that he loves hiring mums because they're so on their shit, they're so organised, they work really hard, they over deliver, and that he loves exploiting mums because he knows they will over deliver, was essentially the point that he was trying to make. And we're like, that's not a win, that's just exploiting your staff. I don't think he was making the point that he thought he was making there. Jess, you were saying that you had some experience of this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite experience and attitude, but I think it kind of ties back to how flexible working, it's not just for parents, it can work for everyone. So I work for someone who felt confident enough to say out loud in front of me as an employee that he loved employing people without families and long-term partners, because if the client had a last-minute demand or like a last-minute call, like they were willing to drop everything and like work through the night and like sacrifice all their personal time to like do whatever it took to get that over the line and to make the client happy. And I just remember being so like the comment wasn't directed at me, and I just remember thinking like, well, it's so disrespectful to that person to think that their free time outside of work, whatever they want to do, whatever passions or interests that they have outside of work, just isn't important because they don't have a family. Like everybody loses with that attitude. I just think it's just like parents lose, people without families lose. So I think, the flexible working policies, in the same way that inclusive working policies impact everyone, they can be just sort of a benefit to us all. So
they really can. I remember when I had my first child, and it was pre-pandemic, so everybody was mostly in the office 9 to 5, and when I was returning to work I asked if I could shift my hours to be 8 to 4 because it would help me get to the pickup on time and not be charged obscene fees. And I remember another member of staff saying to me when they found out that I got this arrangement, like, but that's not fair because I come in at 8 o'clock anyway. So why should you get to leave at 4 when I'm coming in at 8? And I was like, nobody's making you come in at 8. You want to come in at 8, and you could also ask to leave at 4. Like you could make that request. And they were so frustrated, and they were acting like I was in the wrong for that attitude. And then ultimately they did shift their hours. They did start officially working 8/4s and going to the gym and being much happier on an evening. But it's just like, all these little aggressions that come across is so frustrating, and flexible working benefits everybody, not just parents.
Totally agree. So with the likes of Pregnant Then Screwed working so hard to ensure that working parents are supported, it does seem that there have been some big shifts in our industry. I hope you agree, Lauren. I know there's a lot more to do, but I think we're on the journey, and we're here for it, which is what it's all about, I think. Obviously, as our industry is, it's fast-paced, but there needs to be a level of understanding from leadership when it comes to parents, and flexible working is obviously here to stay, and it can work. So returning mothers, I think we all agree, do need to feel fully supported. So I think we totally agree with what you've come on to call BS on today, and it's been a great conversation.
Great.
So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Jess, for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll see you next time on Real Talk.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.